Hello students, before this we have studied male reproductive system, female reproductive system, which are the parts of the male reproductive system and which are the parts of the female reproductive system we have studied. So next thing we are going to study, and next point in this video we are going to learn, and that one is their development and birth of that particular child. Development and birth. So before this we have studied fertilization takes place. Fertilization means male gamete fuses with female gamete and it produces zygote, and when that zygote is produced, repeated division of that particular mitotic division of zygote takes place. Zygote get converted into embryo, and that embryo is transferred, or it is carried to the uterus. It is carried to the uterus, and in the uterus it is implanted. Implantation takes place into the uterus, and further development of that embryo takes place into the uterus, and complete growth of the baby takes place in the uterus, and then during the parturition it is given out of the body. It is expelled out of the body. So some points related to the development and the birth we are going to learn. That one point is there, development and birth is there. Development and birth. Next point is there. So how development and how many days or how many weeks and how many months it is taking. So first point is there in the development and the birth. First thing is there, zygote is formed after the fertilization in the oviduct. So where fertilization takes place in case of the female reproductive system, fertilization takes place into the oviduct. And after fertilization, what is produced? After fertilization, zygote is produced. Diploid zygote is produced. Second point is there, zygote undergoes repeated mitotic divisions and it forms embryo. So zygote undergoes mitotic division and it will form embryo. And next point is that embryo is pushed towards the uterus, and it is implanted into the uterus. So it is that embryo, it is carried towards the uterus and it is implanted into the uterus, and total growth of the embryo into the fetus and into the baby takes place into the uterus. So total growth after implantation into the uterus, total growth of the particular embryo into the fetus and then baby takes place, and embryonic development is completed within 9 months, that is 36 weeks after the fertilization. So embryonic development is completed in how many weeks? 36 weeks, that is 9 months after the fertilization. And how that particular embryo, developing embryo, is getting food from the mother. So when it is implanted into the uterus, one organ called as a placenta is formed around that particular embryo to supply the food, to the embryo. So organ placenta is formed, and that organ placenta is providing food to the developing embryo. So we'll see what are the points. First point is there, zygote is formed after the fertilization into the oviduct. Zygote is formed after fertilization. In the oviduct. Second point is there, in case of second point, zygote undergoes repeatedly mitotic divisions and forms embryo. So zygote undergoes repeated mitotic division and forms embryo. It forms embryo. Due to the mitosis, embryo is formed. Next point is there, the embryo is pushed towards the uterus and it is implanted into the uterus. Embryo is pushed into the uterus and implanted into uterus. Then fourth point is there. In case of the fourth point, total growth of the embryo takes place into the fetus and baby into the uterus. So total, or you can say complete growth of embryo, takes place into fetus and baby in the uterus. Fifth point is there. So in the fifth point, embryonic development is completed within 9 months, that is 36 weeks after the fertilization. Embryonic development is completed within 9 months, that is 36 weeks after fertilization. And the sixth point is there, how that particular embryo gets food. So an organ, and you can say an organ placenta is developed to supply food to the developing embryo. So who is providing food, supplying food to the developing embryo? Placenta provides food to the developing embryo. So in short, we'll see how is this process takes place. So like this way structure we have studied before this. So like this way, and here oocyte or follicle is produced, and that it is containing oocyte. It will come here, and here ovulation will take place. And see, so whatever sperms are released into the vagina, that sperms are passing, or that these sperms, so these sperms will travel towards the oviduct. This one is the oviduct. So these sperms are reaching to the oviduct, and here fertilization takes place. Into the oviduct. So after fertilization, it is forming embryo. Here it is forming embryo. Okay, embryo will be there here. This one will be there, embryo. So that embryo is coming towards the uterus. Here is the uterus. And when it will come into the uterus, it will get implanted. Here, and here further development of that particular baby takes place into the uterus. Embryo takes place into the uterus. Fertilization occurs into the oviduct, and when After fertilization, zygote is formed, and that zygote will get converted into embryo. Zygote will get converted into embryo. Embryo will be implanted into the uterus, and further growth, complete growth takes place into the uterus. Okay. So this one is the representation of that particular development and birth. So next point we are going to study, and in that always remember. Next point is there, always remember. In that always remember. See, we have studied in case of the germ cells or reproductive cell. So in case of the male reproductive cells or germ cells, after meiosis it is forming male gamete, and male gamete contains chromosomal number is there, male gamete 22 plus X or 22 plus Y is there, 22 plus X or 22 plus Y is there. So we'll see in detail. So first thing is there, next point you are going to learn that one is there, always remember. Always remember. What to remember? So man is totally responsible for the sex of the child, or male is completely or totally responsible for the sex of the child. For that some reasons are there. So during the zygote formation, man contributes either X chromosome or Y chromosomes. So during the fertilization, during the zygote formation, male gamete contributes either X chromosome or Y chromosome, and the sex of that particular baby depends upon X or Y chromosome which is contributed from male. But female only transfers only X chromosome. Female only transfers X chromosome to the next generation. And at the time of the fertilization, suppose if X chromosome comes in contact or X chromosome comes from the male, then when it fusion will take place, then when X chromosomes comes from the male gamete, then it will have girl child. And if Y chromosome is contributed, Y chromosome is shared, okay, then that child will be the boy. And so you should remember that it is not right to consider that particular woman responsible for the sex of that particular baby. So, and we must take efforts to stop the female feticide. Okay, female feticide should be avoided. So some people, if they don't want girl child, they are doing abortion. So that female feticide should be avoided, because, and sometimes some family they are blaming to the woman only, that many girls are produced or many girls are taking birth, then they are blaming to the woman. But it is not true. For the sex of that particular baby, totally male is responsible or man is responsible. So in that always remember which points are there, we'll see. First point is there, man is totally responsible for the sex of the child. Man is totally responsible for the sex of the child, for the sex of the child. Second point is there, during zygote formation, man contributes either X or Y chromosome. During zygote formation, man contributes. So always remember in that, man is totally responsible for the sex of the child. During the zygote formation, man contributes either X chromosome or Y chromosome. X chromosome or Y chromosome. X chromosome or Y chromosome. So next thing is there, but a female transfers only X chromosome to the next generation. Third one is there, but female contributes or transfers only X chromosome to next generation. Then a fourth point is there. In case of the fourth point, at the time of the fertilization, if X chromosome from the male is contributed, then girl child, and if Y chromosome is contributed, then boy child. So at the time of fertilization, if X chromosome from man is contributed, then girl child is produced, and if Y chromosome is contributed, then boy child is produced. The next thing is there. So what should be done? So it is, what you can say, it is not right. So it is not right to consider. It is not right to consider a woman responsible for the sex of the child. So we should take efforts. To save girl child or female feticide. Girl child or female feticide. This one you have to remember. So next thing we are going to learn, and that one is there. What you can say, can you tell? One of the point is there in the textbook. Next point is there, can you tell? So we'll see what is there in the can you tell. So in case of the, when complete development or complete growth of that particular embryo takes place, at that time one of the master gland or pituitary gland which is present nearby the or inside the brain, that gland is there, pituitary gland, and that gland secretes which hormone? And that hormone is there, oxytocin. So hormone released by the pituitary gland when fetal development is completed, and that hormone is there, oxytocin. And under the effects of this oxytocin hormone, uterus contracts, and when contraction of uterus takes place, then a birth of the baby will take place, or parturition takes place, or baby is expelled out. Under the effect of the oxytocin, unbearable pain starts, involuntary pain starts, and because of that baby is given out of the body of that particular female. So can you tell in that first point is there, when complete development of the fetus takes place or hormone released by the pituitary gland, the hormone released by pituitary gland when complete fetal development takes place. Complete fetal development takes place is oxytocin. Which hormone is there? Oxytocin. Is oxytocin. Then under the effect of this oxytocin hormone, uterus contracts. Second one is there. Under the effect of oxytocin, uterus contracts and involuntary pain starts. Involuntary pain in the abdomen starts, and parturition of baby takes place, or birth of the baby takes place, and parturition of baby or birth of baby takes place. So under the effect of oxytocin, this one is there, always remember, oxytocin. And in case of the hospital also, to start the pain, they are giving injection of that particular or tablet of oxytocin. So next point we are going to study, and that one is their menstrual cycle. Next point is their menstrual cycle. So in case of the menstrual cycle, it is one of the important part of the female reproductive system, and due to that menstrual cycle, or you can say reproductive cycle, in that major part is there of menstrual cycle. So how that particular menstrual cycle occurs, which hormones are necessary or which hormones are responsible for that particular menstrual cycle, within how much period it is operated, and next many points related to the menstrual cycle we are going to learn. So see, next point is the menstrual cycle. Or you can say month cycle also. So female reproductive system undergoes some changes. And that changes are repeated after every 28 to 30 days. Female reproductive system undergoes some developmental changes, and that developmental changes are occurring at the time of the puberty or at the time of the adolescence, and that developmental changes are repeated after 28 to 30 days, and it is called as a menstrual cycle. Second important point is that menstrual cycle is a natural process. And it is controlled by 4 hormones, and that 4 hormones are there: follicle stimulating hormone, then luteinizing hormone is there, estrogen is there, and progesterone. So these 4 hormones are responsible to control that particular menstrual cycle. And see, one of the follicle in the ovary start to develop along with oocyte or along with ovum or egg cell under the effect of follicle stimulating hormone. Next point is there that developing follicle, it secretes estrogen. And under the effect of estrogen, endometrium starts to develop. Inner lining of that particular uterus, endometrium of that uterus or inner lining of the uterus starts to develop. and that endometrium or inner lining of that particular uterus start to develop, or it regenerates during the each subsequent cycles, or each subsequent menstrual cycles under the effect of estrogen. So development of the endometrium takes place under the effect of estrogen, and developing follicle completes its development. When a developing follicle completes its development, at that time it bursts under the effect of luteinizing hormone. And when that developing follicle bursts, developed follicle burst, at that time ovum or oocyte egg cell, it is released, and that particular it is called as a ovulation. And the remaining tissues of that particular follicle, when follicle burst, remaining tissues of that particular burst follicle, they are forming corpus luteum, and that corpus luteum secretes estrogen and progesterone. So points related to this one we'll see. And when estrogen and progesterone these are produced, then complete or that particular development of that particular endometrium again starts. And then due to the secretion of that particular corpus luteum, then whatever endometrial glands are there, they are secreting their secretions. Again under the effect of progesterone, that particular endometrium becomes ready for the implantation of that particular embryo, and when implantation will take place, then a menstrual cycle gets stopped for the short period, or it will get stopped till the parturition and till the breastfeeding. And if that particular oocyte, after ovulation, if oocyte is not fertilized within 24 hours, then corpus luteum is converted into corpus albicans, and corpus albicans, it makes, because of that it is inactive, it becomes inactive, and because of that secretion of estrogen and progesterone is completely stopped. And so whatever endometrial layers are there, tissues of the endometrial tissues, again unfertilized oocyte, unfertilized egg, and these are released, or these are thrown out of the vagina along with bleeding, and it is called as a menstrual cycle. So points related to this one we'll see. First point is there, female reproductive system. First point is there, female reproductive system undergoes some repeated changes at the time of puberty, or you can say adolescence, at puberty or adolescence, after every 28 to 30 days, that is, it is called, or you can say it is called menstrual cycle. It is called as a menstrual cycle. Second point is there. So menstrual cycle is a natural process, and it is controlled by 4 hormones. Menstrual cycle is natural process, and it is controlled, and it is controlled by four hormones. Four hormones, and these four hormones are there. First one is there FSH. FSH, you can say follicle stimulating hormone. Stimulating hormone. Second one is there, B1 is there, LH, luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone. C1 is there, estrogen, and D1 is there, progesterone. Progesterone. So these four hormones are controlling menstrual cycle in the female. Menstrual cycle in the female. So we'll see next point. Third point is there, one of the follicle, many follicles are there in the ovary. One of the follicle in the ovary starts to develop along with oocyte under the effect of follicle stimulating hormone. One of the follicle starts to develop along with oocyte or egg cell under the effect of follicle stimulating hormone. Under the effect of follicle stimulating hormone, or you can say FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. Next thing is there, developing follicle. Fourth point is there, developing follicle secretes. Developing follicle, it is secreting hormone. That particular hormone is there, estrogen. Developing follicle secretes estrogen hormone. Which hormone it is secreting? Estrogen hormone. Okay. So next thing is the point number 5. Endometrium of uterus starts to develop or regenerates during the each subsequent cycles under the effect of estrogen. So endometrium of uterus starts to regenerate or develop during each cycle under the effect of estrogen. Sixth point is there. So developing follicle, it bursts. Developing follicle completes its development and it bursts under the effect of luteinizing hormone. So developing follicle, after complete development bursts under the effect of luteinizing hormone. Under the effect of luteinizing hormone. Then next, seventh point is there. After bursting, oocyte is released and it is called as a ovulation. After bursting of follicle, oocyte is released, called as ovulation, Then eighth point is there, called as ovulation. And if what you can say, remaining cells, remaining tissues of follicle forms corpus luteum. Corpus luteum. So remaining tissues of the follicle forms corpus luteum, and which secretes estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone. So remaining tissues of the follicle forms corpus luteum, and which secretes estrogen and progesterone. So next point is there, under the effect of estrogen, endometrium, develops. Okay, secretes progesterone, estrogen, and endometrium develops. Okay, the next thing is there, 10th point is there, if oocyte is fertilized within, oocyte is not fertilized, if oocyte is not fertilized within 24 hours of ovulation, then corpus luteum converts into corpus albicans. Corpus luteum converts into corpus albicans. Okay, so remaining tissue of the follicle forms corpus luteum, and which secretes progesterone. Okay, estrogen, progesterone. It secretes progesterone only, and under the effect of progesterone, endometrium develops. And if oocyte is not fertilized within the 24 hours of the ovulation, then corpus luteum converts into corpus albicans. So next point we'll see corpus luteum is converted into corpus albicans. And at last we'll draw diagram. Point number 11. Corpus albicans stops secretion of estrogen and progesterone. Stops secretion of estrogen and progesterone completely. So endometrial. So, 1 minute. Endometrial layer degenerates. Endometrial layer degenerates, and endometrial tissues unfertilized oocyte and unfertilized oocyte is given out of the body, along with bleeding. Okay, if corpus albicans stops secretion of estrogen and progesterone completely, then endometrial layer degenerates and endometrial tissues unfertilized oocyte is given out of the body along with bleeding through vagina. Okay, and then 12th point is there. If oocyte is fertilized, then corpus luteum secretes estrogen and progesterone. Corpus luteum secretes estrogen and progesterone, and due to this endometrial development takes place. And endometrium becomes ready for implantation of embryo. Then 13th one is there. If fertilization and implantation takes place, implantation of embryo in the uterus takes place, then menstrual cycle stops temporarily up to parturition and breastfeeding. So next thing is there. Next point we'll write. Next point, one point is there. Then in case of the next point number 14. So during that particular menstrual cycle, during menstruation, female feels unbearable pain and unbearable abdominal pain and weakness due to heavy bleeding and 15th number point is there. So proper rest and proper personal hygiene should be taken during menstruation to avoid infections. So these are the points related to the menstruation. Now we'll draw the diagram, and with the help of diagram I will explain. So this is the diagram of menstrual cycle, and in this diagram which changes takes place, that one we'll see. So pituitary gland is there. That pituitary gland is having hormones, follicle stimulating hormone and LH, luteinizing hormone. So pituitary gland secretes follicle stimulating hormone. Then one of the follicles start to develop under the effect of follicle stimulating hormone, and that follicle start to develop along with ovule or oocyte is there. Inside that oocyte is there, egg cell is there. So along with oocyte it will start to develop. So this developing follicle, it secretes estrogen. It is secreting estrogen, and because of that the development of endometrial layer takes place. Development of this one is there, endometrial layer, and development of endometrial layer takes place due to the effect of estrogen, under the effect of estrogen. So when estrogen is secreted, then this endometrial layer of the endometrium is start to develop, and then when that particular follicle get completely matured, fully grown follicle, it destroys or it bursts under the effect of LH, under the effect of luteinizing hormone. It will break, it will burst. So after bursting it will release oocyte. This one oocyte will be released, and it is called as a ovulation. Oocyte will be released. Ovulation you are saying. And then now here, if sperms will come after the ovulation, when oocyte is released, then if sperms will fuse here, then only at that time zygote formation will take place here. When a sperm will unite, then zygote formation will take place after ovulation. Into the ovulation takes place in case of the oviduct. Then remaining tissues are there. Remaining tissues of that particular follicle. They will form corpus luteum. And that corpus luteum is secreting estrogen and progesterone. And because of that estrogen and progesterone, this endometrial layer, it is becoming again more thick. For the implantation of that particular embryo. Into the uterus. Then it will corpus luteum, and it will secrete estrogen and progesterone. So endometrial layer will become thick. And suppose if this oocyte is not fertilized, then this corpus luteum will get converted to corpus albicans, and corpus albicans will stop formation of estrogen and progesterone. So under the effect of corpus albicans, degeneration of that layer will start, and after 28 days then again menstruation will start, menstruation will take place. So here also day wise it is given: first, second, third, fourth day, period of the menstruation, degeneration of that particular endometrium takes place, and endometrial cells, then unfertilized oocyte and bleeding, it is given out, blood is given out. Then after that, period of regeneration of endometrium. So again developing follicle, it is secreting estrogen, and then endometrium will get formed, regeneration will take place. Then 14 to 16 days, in that period ovulation will take place, bursting of follicle takes place, oocyte is released, it is called as ovulation. And if this oocyte is fertilized, then corpus luteum, it will secrete estrogen, progesterone, so this endometrium will become thick and it will become ready to accept or to for the implantation of the embryo, and if oocyte is not fertilized, then corpus luteum is going to look corpus albicans, and then all these layers, it will get degenerated, and along with blood these are given out of the body. So this one is related to the menstrual cycle. So in next video we'll see modern techniques into the reproduction.